What's going on, everybody? Day 2 of our new developer-focused Crowdcast series, talking about all things tech and all things Web3 with our developer team here at Messari. For those of you just waking up, it is 1:15, so good morning, GM everybody. It's been a good time out here. We are not on site at ETH Denver because it is chaos. So we are around the corner in our hotel. We're going to be seeing everybody a little bit later on today. For these next couple of conversations, we're going to be talking about on-chain data and on-chain infrastructure, how you can build with it, whether you're using a data application or you just need information to inform the front end of a new application, either one that you're building as a company or maybe building this weekend. And to discuss this as part 3 of our 4-part series on site this weekend, we've got our VP of Engineering, Diran, and we've got Vincent, who has been taking the lead on all of our on-chain data sets and infrastructure over the course of the last couple months since you joined. So Vincent, welcome. People got to know Diran a little bit yesterday. The question that I have, really for everybody that gets into the space, but we'll start with the same thing with you, is what was your journey like to get into Web3? Because everyone's got kind of a different tale and different curiosities that ultimately pull them in and down the proverbial rabbit hole. You have started with a full head of steam with us. So it was not obvious that you were switching from Web 2 to Web 3, which makes it seem like this must have been in the back of your mind for quite some time. So tell people a little bit about your background and what got you here.
Definitely. So my name is Vincent. I'm a backend engineer at Messari. I joined around October last year. And I was, prior to joining Messari, I was at Microsoft for 4 years working on their flagship AR product called HoloLens. Mm-hmm. And before that, I was at Bridgewater Associates, also doing some data platform work. And I've always I've always heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum since like 2013, and
back when Ray Dalio had written it off, quite a number of times.
Of course.
So you were unsuccessful converting him, but
and during the 2017 boom, everyone was talking about Bitcoin. I probably bought like a couple and made like a 2-3x and thought I was a genius. I obviously outperformed Warren Buffett.
And bull market genius.
Exactly. And then later on the market got frothy. I was like, man, this is just a huge scam. I'm just staying away from it. So I never really dug into crypto until after DeFi summer of 2020. So after DeFi summer, a couple of my friends were talking about DeFi, and I was just really curious about what this DeFi thing is, and searched upon the internet, and there were just so much resource. The space was extremely fragmented at the time. It's very hard to get good resource, and the Messari thesis of 2021 was actually the first overview of the crypto industry that I came across at the time, and I was very impressed by the content. I was like, wow, whoever wrote this is a big brain. I basically dove down the rabbit hole and started kind of understanding the tech behind things, reading the Bitcoin white paper, the Ethereum white paper, as well as some of the other DeFi protocols. And at the time, I was actually doing a refinance of my house, and there was a little bit of, the whole process itself is not easy. There are so many different brokers that you have to talk to, and they require like 12, 13 pieces of documents from you, and then it's so opaque, right? They all have different quotes, and it's just a big hustle. And then to further complicate things, I was I was residing in the United States, so my house was in the US, and myself was in Canada at the time, and to get the loan out, I needed a notary, and they wanted me to be in the US, so it took me 2 months to get the whole thing done. And just around the same time, as I was extremely frustrated, I learned about Compound. And my first time learning compound. It took me like a minute to like figure out how the whole thing works, how the website works, how to use it, and then took me another minute to actually deposit my ETH and lend out USDC. And I was like just like mind blown. I was so impressed at how easy things could be, and how the like TradFi, there's no way TradFi can compete with blockchain and DeFi.
Well, that was consistent with my experience with the mortgage lenders, which I told you all in colorful detail last night at dinner. We'll skip over that part of the anecdote. But so I think a lot of people have different ways of getting that 0 to 1 moment. In your case, it was a home refinancing. Once you had that moment, what was the kind of evolution over the course of the next few months as you started getting progressively deeper? And when you made the decision that you wanted to switch and find a place to get into the industry, how did you think about the wide range of opportunities that there are right now?
Right. I guess I was really lucky at the time, because that was like late 2020 and early 2021 when it was like right before the boom where blockchain or crypto as an industry is relatively just still one thing. Whereas like today, if you talk about like crypto, there's NFTs, there's DeFi, there's like different layer 1, layer 0s, and like GameFi, like all small sectors, and every sector has tons of stuff going on. Whereas when I joined, like things are just, well, not when I joined, but when I kind of started to get into the space, things were developing, and it was like I was on crypto Twitter all day, obviously, and I was just following the Uniswap, SushiSwap scandal, and then like the emergence of the own protocol and like all the stuff happening. So I followed all the latest resources and was able to like learn I guess what I missed in the past couple of years in the process, and really get myself knowledgeable in the space. And like me myself, it's also like a fairly big degen, so I would like trade a lot of the shitcoins, as well as I farm across many chains. Obviously the yield has been very rewarding, so I guess it's a part of being early in the crypto space.
So the path then was really looking at the speculative side of the market and the financial side of the market, and just like how do you actually trace where the opportunities are and where the yields are, or, what have you. So obviously data is a pull there. Well, why don't we talk about you joined just in Q4, have already been taking the lead on a lot of the on-chain infrastructure as we think about new metrics. Why don't you help people understand just 0 to 1, which could be good for the hackers that are here this weekend. Like, what are the must-knows about working with on-chain data for your application, whether it's for a data product like we have, or just any front-end product that's going to pull on-chain data sources? How do you break down between the centralized services, the decentralized oracles, the middleware? Just give people like a quick snapshot of the stack and kind of how we think about things.
Right. Everyone says like blockchain is a public ledger and has all the information transparent and open, and anyone can get access to. The reality is, while all these information is public and available, they are very raw. It's like a sea of data that you have to like really put in an effort to like parse and analyze and kind of pick out the specific data and reshape them in the form that you want. So this process itself is actually not trivial, at least at this point. It doesn't matter whether you're like a data analyst or a dApp developer, or just someone who wanted to like take a peek at the blockchain data. It actually takes quite a bit of effort to extract them from the blockchain.
Cool. So rewinding. The recap here is December 2021. I received a challenge from Vincent. I needed to go on-chain and interact with on-chain to unlock a prize. And the prize was an NFT that Vincent had created both the artwork as well as the actual NFT on chain, and a prize pool associated with it. And you had made a couple of design decisions. It was also one of your first forays into building a smart contract, deploying it into a live network. How was that process like?
It was actually pretty good. I was, I guess, pleasantly surprised by how much we've gone from 2017, 2018, that there are so many resources around how to become a Solidity developer and how to write your first smart contract, as well as the tooling, the infrastructure. So everything was really nice. Everything was there. It was fairly easy for me to get started.
When you say that, what were some of the building blocks that you used, like right out of the gates, just to make that quick MVP?
Yeah, for sure. So Solidity is the language I use to write the smart contract. There are some alternatives like Viper or other things, but Solidity is the most popular, so I decided to go with it. And the tooling I used is called Hardhat. It's one of the most popular tooling used by Solidity developers nowadays. That it does a lot of scaffolding for you. It does a lot of, for example, extending your smart contract to Etherscan, get it deployed as well as verified. So that's been good. And obviously better than manually uploading all the files and kind of clicking through things. There's another tool called Remix, which allows you to design or code the smart contract in a browser. I decided to use Hardhat because I guess it has more features.
Yeah. So take us from there. So you have the tooling. What was sort of the 0 to 1 in terms of learning the language, building it, and deploying? I presume to test that first, and then and then to prod.
Right. So learning the development, there's a really good resource I recommend, which is it's called Crypto Zombies. It's basically like a little zombie game that I'm actually not sure who developed Crypto Zombies, but this group put together this zombie NFT game that you basically walk you step by step through the entire process of developing both the smart contracts as well as the front end, the Web3 component to it. It requires zero knowledge on smart contracts or blockchain, so it's very easy for anyone with prior programming language to get started. So basically I took a lot of learnings from that and then put into this NFT smart contract I was thinking about. And so it has, I guess the core feature of the NFT contract is that there is a reward that's deposited into the contract, and you have to answer a set of questions correctly in order to get that reward. And to do that, it's actually not the most straightforward, because when the smart contracts are deployed onto testnet or onto the blockchain, in order to have people to kind of easily interact with it, you need to verify the code, which means if you hide the solution of your questions in the contract, we need a way to verify that. It could be seen by the other people as soon as they review your verified contract. So the way I did it was I put it into two separate contracts. One is, I called it the Sensei contract. It's just for storing the questions as well as the answers, and it's basically it has the interface that any other contract can send, can call the function and ask if the answer is correct. And that's closed source. It's not verified. You cannot see what the logic looks like. And then I have a public contract that people can interact with it. And in terms of the development, usually you can do it like locally on your own computer. So you actually spin up a blockchain on your own computer, a local blockchain that you are the miner and you can basically tell it to do whatever you want. Hard Hat has a really good tooling for you to do that. I know there are some other alternatives like Ganache, whatnot, and then after that, you write the test scripts and deploy scripts to make sure that everything's correct. You deploy it to the test net and then you deploy it to mainnet.
You also made a conscious choice there of Polygon, which is a sidechain, versus Ethereum mainnet.
Right.
For folks who are not familiar with what is a sidechain versus what is mainnet, what are the pros and cons of using one versus the other?
Right. So Ethereum is the blockchain that I guess most people are familiar with. It has certain design choices or like kind of trust assumptions that the developers decided to make that resulted it having a smaller block space, meaning that it's only capable of processing a certain number of transactions per second, and because everyone in the world is fighting for that limited amount of block space, it drives the fee to go up. So it's very expensive to use the Ethereum blockchain or Ethereum mainnet, especially when it comes to deploying a smart contract, because when you deploy a smart contract onto the blockchain, it requires basically permanent storage on the data that on the contract logic that you are storing, and that's costly to all the node operators. So you have to pay quite a lot of ETH for that. So to solve that problem, a lot of people have come together to either build build different kind of scaling solutions, and there are side chains, there are like layer 2s, and there are alternative layer 1s. So Polygon is one of the the earliest side chain to Ethereum, which is it's EVM compatible. It uses a proof of stake consensus mechanism as opposed to proof of work. It's very easy to bridge into from the Ethereum mainnet. The team maintains an official bridge. It's very cheap. It costs like less than a cent to make a transaction. So for those of you who are like new to the blockchain world, who are new to smart contract, that's a really good place for you to basically play around with the blockchain space while having everything kind of being real, because all the monetary, like all the tokens on Polygon and all the the smart contracts have like real economic economic underlying to them.
Yeah, we've also seen a lot of the DeFi projects move to these other chains other than Ethereum for that same reason. So for example, SushiSwap is on Polygon, SushiSwap is on Ethereum. As someone who's deep in DeFi, how do you make sense of all of this data from a consumer perspective and also from an ingestion perspective?
Right. So from a user perspective, I think it's a great thing, because Ethereum or blockchain itself is obviously like a really good thing, and there are so many things people can build on top of it. But because of the limitation on the fees on Ethereum specifically, it's driving a lot of users away, especially the newcomers who just cannot afford like $20 or even like sometimes $100 per transaction. That I would not like use the blockchain. I would not send money to my mom if the transaction is like $20. It's probably gonna, it doesn't make any sense. And in the meantime, there are sidechains or alternatives like Polygon, who is much cheaper, and a lot of the major protocols they also decided to deploy on those alternative chains. Aave, Sushi, they all have a big presence on Polygon as well, and there are a lot of people trading, transacting on the layer 2 or on the side chain. So it's a really good place for like newcomers to learn, to experiment, and get familiar with the space. In terms of
So now that newcomers have a playground to play with, which is the sidechain, there's an added challenge here, which is the data is now fragmented.
Right.
So you have the SushiSwap data on Polygon, you have the SushiSwap data on Ethereum. From an ingester perspective, how do you ingest all of that data so that we can help the users make sense of this?
Right. So because the different chains are like self-sovereign, so they are not connected in any way, or the protocols that live on these chains are also not connected, other than the smart contract being the same or like run by the same people. It's actually like it's not trivial to kind of get data from both places. So SushiSwap, for example, it's being deployed to like 10, 15 different chains. And if you wanted to get an understanding of like how is SushiSwap doing as a business, right? Like how much money are they making? How much volume are they carrying? You have to you have to look at their data on each specific chain to get a understanding. And for a sushi token holder or like an XSushi token holder, the fee that they accrue to their token or kind of the revenue that they earn is actually aggregated across all chains. So that data is actually really important to you. So to get that data, you have to, the kind of the most low level way is you have to talk to the nodes on each of those blockchains or validating for each of those blockchains. They often look pretty similar because they are all EVM compatible, but you still have to do that infrastructure. And then you need to aggregate them in like one way or another.
Right. So talking to RPC nodes, or the alternative is talking to subgraphs.
Right.
What is the added challenge here in ingesting? Do you have to be like a domain expert for each one in order to ingest that data? Or is there some way that you can normalize that data across many protocols?
Right. So if you're interacting with RPC nodes directly, you have to know, like, every chain has the nodes work slightly differently. They have a different endpoint. There's there are some like specific peculiarities to each of them, and in this case, the graph or the subgraphs are actually a nice abstraction over the underlying data or the underlying RPC nodes. You don't need to worry what's underneath at all. You just have to, or as a data consumer, so if you're building the subgraphs, like you probably need to know what goes on underneath. But as a consumer, usually for those protocols, they will have a set of standardized schema across all different chains, and it will be the same to interact with or query data from all the different chains. You literally just have to replace a URL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, one of the keywords that's popped up over the last year or so is metaverse. So people use that word very loosely with very differing types of definitions around it. You having been in the trenches of AR, and what's possible with augmented reality. Can you give us a sense of what is the current version of that technology, and what is sort of available to all of the folks that are just throwing words around in terms of building the metaverse?
Right. So I'll start with my background, AR, VR, at Microsoft, actually building the products. And then I'll talk about the metaverse concept in general. So what Microsoft set out to do is this AR glasses that's super small, super lightweight, that people can just wear them like 24/7. It's basically this device that would give like you and I essentially superpowers that allow you to do like so many things that you couldn't do like previously.
Google Glass, but without the really socially awkward.
Yeah, and like 10 times more better, 10 times more powerful. And so while the vision is amazing, I think we are further out into the future from what the public tend to think or believe. So there are, for AR specifically, there are some very difficult challenges on the foundational layer. So so on the science or like even physics side of things, like especially optics and chemistry for batteries specifically, that's just very, very challenging. And after that, there's obviously a whole set of engineering problems that people need to go solve. So we are. I think there's still a long way to go, but I think we'll definitely get there somehow. All the bigger players in the space, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, or Meta now especially, they are like doubling down on this effort.
I kind of think about the metaverse in two ways. One is just the visual,
Yep.
and kind of immersive experience, and then the other is the ownership and like the territory, like how it's constructed, right? So when I think about like interesting metaverse, like Web3 infrastructure and experiments, it's almost always like how do you build the open operating system that is guaranteed to not be owned by Microsoft or by Meta or by Google, right? So
Right.
I think you have the experience in like one of the tech giants. And obviously, they're by design going to have, I think, a little bit stricter control and emphasis on actually owning their slice of the metaverse.
Right.
How do you think about the this dynamic where the big tech companies can do 100 or 1,000 times more on like the visual side and like just the actual like technical like quality from like a gaming perspective or like an immersive experience? Versus what we might be able to do on the Web3 side, which is the visuals might suck, the rendering might be a little bit, subpar, but that it's going to start slower, but scale much faster and ultimately catch up if kind of the open metaverse wins. So, in light of that, you're not going to catch up on bandwidth. Where can like there be really interesting Web3 experiments, and what are some of the tools that can be built with that in mind?
Right. So. Yes, I do think about the metaverse in the same way, in that there is the kind of visual or I guess more on the experience side, right? Like it's almost like what's depicted in Ready Player One, that someone like put on a VR headset and you are there like 24/7. It's almost like a digital prison, as people would say, and at the same time, you don't want to run into that dystopian future in which most of the stuff that's in that world is owned by a particular company or corporation. In the case of Ready Player One, it's Oasis, which I mean, there could be like real life comparisons to that, but I'm not gonna name names. So on I think blockchain really provided us with the underlying infrastructure to prevent that from happening. It gives us an alternative on what ownership means, especially what digital ownership means in a virtual world. And I think Fred Ersam, in an article he wrote in like either 2017 or 2018, basically talk about the same thing, where like blockchain could be the foundational layer to metaverse or to a virtual world, and I very much agree with that.
Do you think NFTs and like those types of digital goods that are kind of wrapped with those standards, are those going to be the things that need to emerge first, like on Twitter or on Web2 platforms even, before that creates any meaningful experience in like a Web3 metaverse, something like Decentraland or whatnot? Or how do you see like the next couple of years going? And obviously there's a lot of buzz around DAOs and NFTs, at the event this weekend.
Right. So from a so we all know that the big companies like Meta and Apple, like when they take this path, they're gonna really like build out, like basically start top down, right? Build out this huge space with like everything looks extremely nice, extremely fancy, and then try to get the users into the experiences. And then in the blockchain world, obviously there are a lot of people working on like different metaverse, but like no one has that same kind of scale or that I guess that deep pocket to be able to do that sort of thing. So like we have to take a different approach, right? We have to like do a more like ground up approach where we start with something small, something simple, and it could be like kind of the punks, which are like they're kind of pixelated JPEGs or NFTs, but have this core element of ownership that's built into it, and then gradually people get used to the concept. People will, I guess, appreciate the concept, and then build on top of that. So there are, there are already a bunch of, I guess, metaverse-like games built on the blockchain. DeFi Kingdoms, for example. There's another one called World Wide Web that, for example, you can import your NFT into this metaverse as your character, so that the NFT or your identity that you own, you can take it to anywhere else that you go. So it doesn't belong to a particular game. It doesn't belong to a particular company. It's instead of game companies trying to build assets or entities in their world, you own the entities and you take them to different worlds.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear your ideas, whether it's on the metaverse side or on the kind of on-chain data infrastructure side. I have one that kind of straddles the two worlds in terms of hacks this weekend or just companies I'd love to see. I would love to see better search for like multiple Web3 metaverses and blockchain games, because it doesn't really exist. And there's kind of two components to that. There's like what assets actually exist beyond speculation, right? Like what exists and are currently present in like one of these worlds, and then how do you navigate to them, right? So like basically some sense of like liveness. If there's like an avatar like physically online, like in the metaverse, I feel like that's been a missing piece, because people talk about Decentraland and they basically squat on it, but it's almost like buying land in Montana when you're living in New York, right? No one actually goes to Montana but for like once or twice a year, and when you're there, no one else is actually there at the same time, right? So like how do you solve this like co-location problem and like get people to spring up at the same time in the same place, and how do you actually figure out how to manage that spatially? I think it's that is a data problem, right? And like in alerts and a lot of the things that we do for like the fungible tokens, I think could be you could use a lot of the same infrastructure. So I'd love to see that if anyone's going to pitch me on that this weekend. What else do you think would be quick hacks that people might be able to put together this in 48 hours, 0 to 1?
Yes. I think in general, just data itself, like any kind of data coming from the blockchain and exposing them to the public world is going to be very valuable. And as you mentioned, I guess especially in the case of like metaverse, there's a lot of the data is just not like easily accessible right now, and are, I guess, waiting for people to like dig in and expose them.
Well, let's leave the metaverse aside for a second. How about like fungible tokens, like we're supporting at Messari? Like, what would you be excited about as like a plugin for our platform?
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
haven't had time to build, but that
Right.
someone else might be able to build an endpoint for.
For sure, for sure. So, as I mentioned, like subgraphs are a really good way for protocols for smart contracts to expose their data to the public world. And I actually recently went through the top 100 DeFi protocols and just look at their subgraph to see what's there, what's missing. And surprisingly, I was only able to find around 30 out of the 100 protocols that had subgraphs. So like most of them, they don't even have a subgraph that people can easily pull data from. So it's either you gotta figure out the smart contract and the function cost parameters, and then try to get that data from the smart contracts or from the RPC nodes yourself. Or you just rely on whatever that's available to you that you don't know where that's coming from.
Yep.
Yeah. To add on to what Vincent just said, Ethereum is really just taking even more abstract. If we take a decentralized blockchain like Ethereum, really is broken down to two aspects. There's the computation aspect and there's the storage aspect. Ethereum does computation in a decentralized way and does storage in a decentralized way, but both are very expensive. And if you want to make sense of that data, it takes a lot for you to extract that data, index it yourself, and do some analytics in order to take an action on top of it. So you could either go on chain directly and do it yourself, or you could use an indexer. But neither options are in a great spot right now.
Right.
So having something that pushes the data availability forward, I think will make the foundation as a whole much better, and much better for the next set of hackers who are going to be hacking in the next 2 days or in the next year. Something that someone would need to do in like 2 months, hopefully with some better data they can do in 2 days.
Right. And just to add on to that, we are still in a very early stage of pulling data from the blockchain. That most of the subgraphs designed today are revolving around one protocol specifically, and which tend to be very tied to the underlying implementation of that protocol. So we would love to see more kind of standardization across different protocols that would enable people to, get a cross-section of the landscape.
We have one question from our audience, which is Polygon is having some congestion issues today. And this has actually been more of an issue with other layer 2s in general. So can you just speak to the never-ending congestion problem, I guess, and like how you think about managing for that, or kind of thinking about prioritization of layer 2s, or meta ingestion work from where you're trying to pull from like layer 1, multiple layer 2s, and create a composite?
Right. So in terms of the ingestion problem, there are 2 parts to it. One is in terms of making the transactions on chain, basically getting them through, and especially in terms of like either airdrops or like arbitrage opportunities, the chain does get very congested. I know there are a number of things Polygon themselves are kind of working on to tackle that problem. So I'm not gonna comment on that on details. And then there's the data availability problem, which is, hey, this really high performance chain that's getting so much transaction, so much data accumulated, from day to day. How are we going to pull that data from on-chain to off-chain? That also poses an additional problem, and the same thing applies to not only to Polygon, applies to like Binance Smart Chain, Solana in particular, which process like gigabytes of data per day, and I know all of them are aware of this problem, are actively solving this problem. I know the Graph Foundation is working with a number of them on coming up ways to getting that data out in a real-time way.
Yeah, to add on to that, no blockchain is fast enough. Everything is way too slow in this space. If we compare it to the Web2 world, this is laughable right now. But just to simplify that problem, and I'll reiterate, what a blockchain is, like Ethereum, is just computation and storage. What Polygon and the other layer 2s are trying to do is you either optimize on one, the other, or both. So Polygon will optimize on computation first and foremost. So your computation is a lot quicker, it's a lot cheaper, but your data storage, you still have to go back to layer 1 in order for your storage of your account balance to be synced back. And that syncing is beholden to the speed of Ethereum, basically. And whatever happens, you'll have some bottleneck there. I think Polygon has done a pretty good job in this interim phase of coming up with a solution that, hey, we're not going to be perfect. And it's not going to be a moonshot thing, but Polygon iterates pretty quickly. So they have the move fast, break things mentality. And some other teams like ZK Sync, Starkware are more on the long run side of things, of having more beautiful math and providing something that is foundationally groundbreaking. But some folks can argue that, hey, we can't wait that long.
Yeah.
So that's where all of these current layer 2 solutions come in. And to me, I would argue that that is a good thing for this industry, and we definitely need those players. But just bearing in mind that everything is still too slow.
Well, much more to come from Vincent and Diran as we roll out the series. So if you have other questions, or more importantly, other topics that you want us to cover in future episodes like this, we're going to be going much deeper over time. And of course, if you are around this weekend and you're hacking, make sure you flag down anyone with a Messari shirt. We don't have a swag store, so every single time that you see a person wearing Messari swag, it is either because they work for us or they somehow swindled one of our current employees. So make sure you say hello to us. Make sure you say hello to Vincent and Diran and the other developers that we have on site. We're going to do one more episode in 15 minutes on DAOs and NFTs with Malcolm. But for now, we're going to sign off. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you again, Diran. And we will see you on site.